Hello everybody, welcome to another video. Today is the 24th of August. Today we're going to be talking about the plane crash which allegedly killed CEO of the Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin. We're going to be doing a timeline explaining some of the events that occurred leading up to this event. And we're also going to be exploring some of the theories of what could have happened to Prigozhin. So I'm going to separate the video into two different parts. One part's going to be just factual based on reports we're receiving. Obviously, the situation is changing. So some of this information may actually be outdated by the time that I release it due to additional confirmation coming out from new sources. That's something that I can't control because I can't read into the future. So just understand that. And then I'll also make timestamps to separate between these two parts of the video. But then we'll talk about some theories if anybody's interested in that. But now let's get into what's been going on. And there's a lot of news to cover. But let's begin by looking at where Prigozhin has been over the past few days. So we know that after the alleged Wagner mutiny in late June, which was around 23rd, 24th of June, Prigozhin, he then moved to Belarus, then he made his way back into Russia, and recently actually had a flight to Africa. And this is based on public flight logs where you could see a plane that's owned by Prigozhin and presumably had Prigozhin within the plane. We can't say for sure, but it seems as if he was in that plane and that he had a flight from Moscow to Damascus on August 18th. So I will show basically the route that he would have taken. It would be from Moscow over here. You take south, you go to Damascus in Syria. Then from there, he made his way to Bamako, the capital of Mali. That's the record according to the public flight logs showing that the plane landed in Bamako. And this was on August 19th that he actually landed in the capital city. And this makes sense because, Mali, the Mali government has very good connections with the Wagner Group. And the reason why Prigozhin would want to even visit Mali at this point is for several reasons. First of all, it was in order to recruit some of the local Donso militants in order to support Wagner's operations in Mali. Also, more generally, in order to get the African population, especially in West Africa, on his side, given a lot of the recent drama in Niger and the crisis around that region in West Africa, in the Sahel region. Prigozhin was probably trying to capitalize off of that to gain additional support. He also probably had some sort of financing and business operations within the region because a lot of Wagner's activities are in Africa, especially in West Africa in this region. So this makes sense that he would visit over there. And then, as I showed before in this video, you could see that he is filming himself in what appears to be Africa. He claims it's Africa. And there's actually been alleged geolocations of this video being filmed outside of Bamako. So this seemed like he was actually there. And that would mean that he took that plane. In that same plane that he would have taken to Bamako, actually left Bamako towards Damascus on August 20th. But this video that you're seeing over here on your screen was released on August 21st. Either way, let's look at Prigozhin's route. So he makes his way from Bamako to Damascus on the 20th, and then on the 21st, he makes his way from Damascus to Moscow, which means that for 2 days, from the 21st to the 23rd, Prigozhin was presumably in Moscow before the infamous flight across the airspace of the Russian Federation in the direction of St. Petersburg. Because what's being alleged by basically every single source is that he was going in the direction of St. Petersburg. This is also backed up by the actual route that he was taking, which we can see over here. Here you can see the route that he was taking. You can see that he took off in the northwestern part of Moscow. You can see there was a steady course that the plane was going on and that it was connected to the ground. The radar lost connection around this area over here, which is pretty close to the Tver region, the city of Tver itself. And this is very, very interesting because the plane did not crash at this area. The plane did not crash near the city of Tver. It crashed about 160 kilometers to the northwest. So for all that time, we don't really know the flight path specifically. So there's a lot of unanswered questions about what was going on during that time. But either way, it is very, very interesting that at the same time as Prigozhin's plane was flying above this area and then crashed a bit after the crash, and I'm going to go back to Prigozhin's plane, but for a second to make a quick detour. Right after his plane crashed, there was also incidents with another plane that the Wagner Group and Prigozhin own. So I'll show that to you guys over here. So you can see shortly after the crash in the Tver region, a second business jet owned by Prigozhin that was heading along a similar route from St. Petersburg landed in Moscow. And you can see how the plane, which is presumably owned by Prigozhin, actually made a detour. It was it ascended above certain airfield west of Moscow and then made a turn and then landed in the southern part of Moscow. And that was right after the crash. So that is, again, very interesting. Now, the thing to look at when you imagine the crash over here is that it wasn't above the city of Tver itself, it was above an area way further to the northwest. We'll actually show it to you guys over here. Here's a geolocation of the general area where the plane crashed. And the plane that crashed, just so you guys get an idea, it's called the Embraer Legacy 600, and this is a business jet which has a tail sign RA02795. And the second plane, which we showed before that flight path around Moscow, that's called the Embraer ERJ13J BJ Legacy 650. Again, very long names. But either way, here's the general location and not the specific location because we don't have a specific location of the field where the plane crashed on yet, at least my knowledge, where the plane crashed. And if you zoom out, you'll see this is the Tver region. You can see the city of Tver. You can see that the crash occurred in the northern parts of this region. It occurred around the Belagoye district within Tver Oblast. And you can see it happened very, very close to this local village over here, Kuzhinkinskoye. It didn't actually occur within the settlement itself. In the video footage, you could see that the plane and the rubble was in an open field, so it was nearby, not in the town, but nearby. And the thing that's very interesting about the plane crashing over here is that, first of all, in the video footage it was recorded because people were recording the plane as it was flying, and then as it crashed, there were two explosions that were heard beforehand. And also imagine the setting, the environs of where this plane crashed. Let me show you guys something. So over here you can see this is the area where the plane crashed around there. We're gonna zoom in and take a look. So here you have Kuzhinkinskoye around where the plane crashed, and then very, very close to it you have this ammo dump. If you zoom in, you'll see there's all these different bases over here. So it's all this different military infrastructure, and I'm sure that there's actually air defense systems in this place that are installed. And then nearby, you also have a local airfield. If you zoom in, you can see the airfield itself, and that would also presumably have air defense systems. So this gives you an idea of the setting. It's a highly fortified area, a lot of military personnel in the area, and what's being alleged by most sources, especially in the Western media, is that Prigozhin's jet was shot down by air defense systems of the Russian Federation. So that would account for those two explosions. Now, this is not the only theory, and we're going to get into that later, but just before we get to that, we're going to look at the casualties. So there was 10 confirmed casualties, there were 7 attendants on the jet, and there was 3 crew members. Now, the Russian Federal Air Transport Agency, they released a list of names of those individuals that were killed. And as we said before, 7 attendants, 3 crew. In the attendants category, it included Prigozhin and Dmitry Utkin. So here you have Prigozhin and here you have Utkin. Utkin is the original founder of the Wagner Group. And then of those 5 other individuals that are attendants, there's probably some that were very important within Prigozhin's inner circle within Wagner. So if this is the case, then a huge portion of Wagner's basically ringleaders have all been killed in one single strike, which would be very, very, very huge implications for the organization itself, which still has tens of thousands of volunteers that are stationed in Belarus and others that are discharged into Russia. But either way, at the same time, the Federal Air Transport Agency, they actually entered into the rubble and they began taking out what is remaining of the bodies. And what they said is that they were able to find Prigozhin's body and that it basically has like preliminary identifications in the rubble. So we haven't gotten like official confirmations yet there's like not an autopsy yet or anything like that. But that's what they're saying from their initial reports from the ground. And then again, it's hard to believe any of this until you see it yourself, and that's probably going to come out in the next few days. But again, as I said before, you have to be very skeptical of everything that comes out. There's a lot of conflicting information. There's also a lot of information from Wagner Telegram channels that may or may not be affiliated with Prigozhin. Some of them may be fan accounts, so you gotta watch out for that. But they're saying that they have inside confirmation that Prigozhin died. A lot of that is also unconfirmed for the time being. But now let's move on to more of the uncharted territory, which would be the debate as to what actually happened and whether Prigozhin actually died. From what I've seen from the past few hours, just like scrolling through social media, trying to get an idea of the situation and what people are interpreting it to be, I've seen that there are multiple different theories. And these are like the main theories, and there might be a few other ones that I am missing. The first theory would be that it was actually an accident and that there was no malicious intent involved in the shooting of the plane, and that the jet was actually just flying above the airspace of some of these military targets, and then that as a result, perhaps it was mistaken as a threat and then shot down as a result. Maybe there was a mistake that was involved. Maybe it wasn't even shot down by air defense systems. Maybe there was some sort of irregularity on the plane itself which caused the crash. Because there's also a debate that's been going on as to whether it was air defense systems or there was an issue with the plane itself. Because something that's been reported on, and this is sort of cutting edge, I haven't seen this mentioned that much, is that there was a lot of like irregularities with the speed of the plane in the build-up to the actual crash, and that it originally it really decreased in speed and then it speeded up like 150 knots right before it ended up crashing. And this was all happening as it continued to gain and gain altitude throughout this entire period right before it got hit. So there's a lot to keep in mind when you're making this analysis. That's just one idea. The other is that it was an assassination, and this seems like one of the prevailing theories, and that there's a lot of different people that probably wanted to kill Prigozhin. There's the idea that Putin directly wanted to kill Prigozhin, and that would be due to the fact that he betrayed him. That would be the idea that Prigozhin and Putin originally were allies, and that due to the events in the mutiny, Putin basically saw him as a threat, and as he's done so many times before, he just decided to eliminate him. And this is the way it's going to be done about. And he was able to basically concentrate all of the heads of Wagner that were involved in that mutiny in one spot and just take them out like that. That would be the argument that they would make. There's also certain anti-Wagner factions in Russia that may not be Putin directly, whether it be in the MOD or anything like that. So maybe they were involved on a local level and it wasn't Putin directly. Maybe it was even the SBU, according to this theory of an assassination, because the SBU, they've been known for their operations in Russian territory that would include strikes on Moscow. And Tver is pretty close to Moscow in relative terms. Tver is a region just to the north of Moscow, so it would make sense. So you have the idea that maybe the SBU are trying to like get revenge for everything that Prigozhin did in Ukraine itself. That's potentially a theory. I haven't seen it mentioned that much, but perhaps that's something that's circulating. Or maybe it's people from inside Wagner. That's the last one that I saw. So this is all a part of the assassination theory. Then there's a theory of a rogue operation by Prigozhin. This is one that I'll just give my personal opinion. I find to be sort of unlikely compared to the other ones. And this would be him starting on a blank slate. He wants to basically avoid capture by Putin. This would assume that Putin was actually trying to find him and look out for him and try to get him at some point, and that this was basically just a cover story to basically escape from the public spectacle and just restart as maybe a private citizen, or maybe sort of get Wagner to go about rogue operations that wouldn't even involve Putin. I just don't find this to be likely given everything that's happened after the Wagner mutiny in late June, with the sort of cooperation that's been occurring between the Russian Federation and Wagner, where they've been allowed into Belarus. I don't see the reason why he'd have to like restart everything now and just become a private citizen and try to hide from Russia. And even if he tried to do that, I feel like Russian security services would definitely be able to track him and they would be able to eliminate him if that was really what they were trying to do. So I don't know. I don't really think that one's even that big of a theory compared to the other ones. The other one that I've seen that's like the prevailing theory is that it's all psyop, that is either being done by Putin and Prigozhin together or just being done by Prigozhin himself. And this would be to fool people to believe that he's dead, and then in reality he's alive, obviously, and he's doing something behind the scenes, presumably with Wagner. Now, what would that be? That's really something that I haven't seen elaborated upon in a cohesive narrative yet. So that's something we're gonna have to wait and see. If there's a lot of doubts raised about whether Prigozhin actually ended up dying, in that case, we're gonna have to wait and see if new motivations come out. Maybe it would be related to Ukraine or something like that. That would be very interesting. But what I will say is that just remember the timeline over here. Remember what happened yesterday or 2 days ago, given the fact that it's the 24th right now. On August 22nd, remember Surovikin? Surovikin, he was in charge of the SMO, I believe, from October to January. And even after he was relieved of that post as head of the SMO, which was replaced by Gerasimov, he was still in charge, and he was the commander of Russia's aerospace forces. This is something that he's been in charge of for multiple years now. He was actually dismissed from this role on August 22nd. And this comes after months and months of rumors that Surovikin was under house arrest. I can't confirm it, obviously, so I'm saying rumors that he was under house arrest due to the fact that he was accused of treason because he had previous knowledge of the Wagner mutiny that was occurring in June, and he didn't inform Putin about it. So he was sort of an accomplice in whatever Prigozhin was trying to do on that day. That's at least the theory of why he was under house arrest, if that's even true. Because I'm saying this all with ambiguity because I can't really say any of this for sure. I don't have an inside source. But regardless of that, the fact of the matter is, and this is something that can be disputed, he was relieved of his post basically a day before the events that occurred with Prigozhin being shut down. And just to be fair, I will say that for a while, Sergei Surovikin has not really been at the forefront of the operations of the Russian aerospace forces. For a while now, his deputy has really been the one that's been conducting a lot of his operations. He's sort of been like the interim commander, while Surovikin's been doing everything elsewhere on a broader scale or house arrest. So this is sort of just a confirmation of what's already been the case for a while now. So who knows? Maybe it is connected. Maybe it's not. That's really up for you to decide, and time will also tell. So that's all for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.